Today we're going to talk about the deadliest riot in the history of the United States. We're also going to talk about how New York City benefited financially from the slave trade without even selling a slave. The background and financing that made the slave trade work. At the turn of the 19th century, New York became one of the top cotton industry financiers. It was transformed later on by cotton into the world's fourth largest financial city. In 1822, cotton produced half the financial trade in New York. Again, I'm not talking about physically trading slaves. This is just the financing behind it, which is usually much bigger than the commodity itself. The slave trade ended in 1808, but New York didn't stop making money from the slave trade. It made money behind the scenes through providing the banking, insurance, stock and bond sales, loans, futures, and derivatives that all were run in the background of the slave trade. So New York became the financial back office of slavery, and companies like Brown Brothers and Harriman made tons of dollars from providing the background. Now here's where it gets interesting. In 1846, there was Irish potato famine, where over 200,000 Irish people settled in the United States. They were mainly in the New York area. Also, with thousands of Germans, Ukrainians, and others that came over. But let's concentrate just on the Irish piece. We'll get to that in a moment. But New York, because of the money that was involved in slavery, New York became almost a southern city. New York had an incredible density of people living, or when there's housing was a tremendous problem. Now let's go back to the Irish and the job competition thing. When the Irish came over, they had to compete against blacks who were there. But in addition, they felt that if slavery was abolished, a bunch of black people would move north and compete for their jobs. Also, at that time, New York invested in 150 massive slave ships to continue to make profit on transport of slavery. Later came a gentleman named Fernando Wood. He was a two-time congressman and two-time mayor of New York. Fernando Wood opposed the 13th Amendment. He was corrupt. He was part of what was called the Tammany Hall machine. He actually proposed and went up for vote for New York to become a free state, not responsible to the North, not responsible to the South, even prior to slavery. In New York, when the battles were going on in the Civil War, there was something called the Conscription Act. The Conscription Act allowed the rich to pay $300 and have someone else replace them on the battlefield. To get out of the war. Or you could find someone and pay them to take your spot on conscription. Conscription is basically, it's a draft, to make a long story short. The Irish didn't take too well to this, and there was attacks on Wall Street of a lot of black workers. The Irish had just come over, and they sort of felt, they handed a citizenship, and then they handed a draft paper at the same time, and that really made people very angry. There came at that time the riot which I'm telling you about, and that was between July 1863 And July 5th, I believe, to July 9th, 1853. Before the riot, it was really quiet. And the way they did, before they did it, the draft, as they had the draft on 42nd Street. Thousands of people came down to 42nd Street when they started putting the names for the people being drafted. And it really didn't set well. I'm not exactly sure what set the incident off, but there were riots all over New York City. There was a black orphanage called the Colored Orphanage Asylum that was burnt to the ground, and a policeman died trying to get some of the kids out of the asylum. There was 119 deaths verified from this. There has never been a riot in the United States to kill so many people. They suspect there was over 1,000 deaths, but no one could document exactly what it was, how big it was. Eventually, the troops came from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. They were called in. They quelled the riot. It was put down. There was over $1,863 worth of damage. 3,000 black people were homeless. At that point, New York's population for blacks began to drop. At the same time, there were riots in Staten Island, Boston, Brooklyn, and other major cities. I need you to subscribe, like if you want more, give me your comments, and have a great day.